Hey folks, it's John from A is for Alcoholic again. Today's conversation is one that is very inspiring to me. I'm very excited about this one. So, who is Mishka Shubaly? Mishka Shubaly is an artist. He's an author. He's a singer. He's a songwriter. He is somebody who embodies the transformation from active alcoholism to recovery. And he has his own way of doing it. He has his own style, his own brand, whatever you want to call it, man. He probably would just say, look, dude, I get up and I decide not to drink every single day. He puts on a live show. He plays guitar and sings. His music is dark. It's depressing. It's grim. It's gritty. You know, if I was going to write a tagline for a music magazine, I might say Tom Waits bumped into Charles Bukowski and knocked his beer over during happy hour. But I would never say anything like that. And honestly, it's just really, some of it's hauntingly beautiful. Some of it's absolutely hilarious. Some of it's really sad. But it's so poignant and authentic. And I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but it really is. And it expresses the darker side of drugs and drinking. His writing, his memoir, entitled I Swear I'll Make It Up to You, was an absolute phenomenal read from beginning to end. And if you've never thought about sobriety, you'll love this book. If you've ever thought about sobriety, you'll love this book. He also has a series of Kindle singles that are out that, again, you can get those on Audible as well. But go find him, read this guy's stuff, and listen to his music. And it was just really great and such an exciting thing for me, you know, especially as somebody who is still new at this and still trying to get in shape, to talk to somebody who goes from, as he puts it, going from an ultra drinker to an ultra runner. It was just really great to be able to sit down with him and talk with him for 45 minutes or whatever in the hotel room after the show. So without further ado, I'm very excited. Please enjoy. This is my conversation with Mishka Shubaly. So I just wanted to say thanks for the show last night. As somebody who's just recently found you, I'm a big fan, and my first introduction to you was on the Rich Roll podcast in 2017. And I immediately was just enthralled and excited, and I was like, oh wow, here's somebody who's done sobriety completely different, and it works for them, you know, because my way was, you know, I went through the 12-step program. I mean, that was just the way that I found it, and so that's the way that I was taught and all that stuff. And when I went into it, I was very trepidatious, I was very suspicious, and I was very I felt like I was a detective trying to figure these things out, and how does this work exactly, and this, and then so I think, you know, a lot of people, and I don't want to discourage or anybody from getting sober any which way they do either. Mm-hmm. My way is not, it was the best way for me, it was the only way for me, but to hear how somebody else had done it and had done it completely different was really eye-opening to me.
Thank you for that, because I've met a lot of people who have come through 12-step programs who aren't as supportive of the path I've taken, the decisions that I've made, you know, how I live these days. And I'm glad that you got to see a show last night too, because the work that I do in my writing, and then obviously, you know, podcasts with Rich or people like that, I focus on talking about self-care, talking about healing, about getting better, about trying to improve, about trying to survive, trying to make your way in the world. And then the live show is sort of the dark half of that. And that's where I express my frustration, my sadness, my anger, resentment about my failures in the past and sort of present failures. And it's all me. So it's I don't think that there's one version that's more authentic than the other. but they diverge pretty quickly and pretty
Yes.
wildly.
Yes, they do. I was doing the math, and I thought I was being clever, and then you announced it that you're coming on 10 years sober coming up here, right? You said that last night?
Yeah.
How does that feel? I mean...
It feels totally bizarre. Because at once your sobriety always sort of feels kind of fresh or like a new skin or, and also it's been so long, like it feels like it's been forever. Mm-hmm. I am pretty well seated in it.
Yeah. You don't find, well, I guess one of the things too is that you navigate bars and clubs and just the music scene in general, which is fraught with alcohol and drugs constantly. And maybe you're not always in a place where you're surrounded by friends and family like last night. Do you find it difficult sometimes? How do you navigate those situations?
Well, you could see last night too, like, with my fans that those people are not in recovery. They may be headed towards recovery.
The kid who was sitting next to me, he was yelling out your name, drinking Jameson and Corona, and so
yeah. Those kids were pretty shit-faced by the end of the night. Mm-hmm. In the UK, they call fans like that punishers because they'll corner you and they'll be like, thanks for the show, it's such a great show, and you're like, thank you, absolutely, you're welcome, thanks for coming out, and then they keep going, and then they grab onto your hand and they're like, oh, I need to tell you about the last thing my father said to me before he died, and you're like, man, I'm just trying to sell a t-shirt.
Yes.
But yeah, I definitely I struggle and I have a hard time on the road, but rarely with alcohol or temptation. Mostly it's just the fact of like dealing with drunk fans, with a drunk promoter, with drunk bartenders or whatever. I just sort of like got that mental clarity in my head that like I don't drink, that no matter what happens, I don't drink.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that, and there are things that can be said in praise of this, but in AA there's this thing of like, I will try not to drink today. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, that I can hear a loophole in there that like, I can try and fail,
Right.
and I think they phrased it that way so that if you fail, you can come back. You can always try again.
Right.
And for me, it was just like, no, I'm done. I'm fucking done. Nothing will make me drink today. And then just putting enough days like that behind me, then now it's off the.
Well, and you've
it's off the table.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we all feel this way in some way or another, that I have done all the drinking that I could ever want to do or need to do. I have been to every dark place, every drunk and high place that I could ever imagine to be or would ever want to imagine to be,
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that like my buddy, my friend, my co-host, he's a tattoo artist by trade. He's an artist, but I remember when I was first getting sober and he had a year on me, and he said, John, I want you to take that very last bender and everything that happened, and I want you to tattoo that on your brain, and I want you to really remember that, because when it comes time and you feel like it's okay to have a drink, I want you to remember the consequences of those actions.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I have taken that. That's what I do every day. That if there's a moment where I'm feeling sad or bummed out or angry, or my girlfriend asked me the other day, how do you feel? And I said, well, honestly, I feel like having a drink, but I'm going to figure out what that means and try to address those issues.
Yeah, it's a complex emotion. That's where a lot of things factor into that. Listen, man, there's definitely times, there's still definitely times where I'm like, man, I would love to have a drink right now, or like, and it's not even like a good drink that I crave. It's like a mediocre one of like, a Coors Light, or like a vodka cranberry from the bar, where it's like just vodka and the cranberry that's just citric acid, sugar, and red, like
Dye.
red coloring. But I was blessed with a number of great and terrifying hangovers where you're just like, oh my god, am I gonna like, what am I gonna throw up next? Like I never ate any of this stuff that's coming up. It's like the and also getting older, being on the road, not sleeping well, not eating well. It's like you wake up and you're like, man, I feel like such fucking dog shit. I wish I could just have a drink. And it's like, no, keep going with that thought, because if you had a drink, then you would have 90 drinks and you would feel a million times worse right now. Yeah. Like, as bad as you feel right now, you would just feel worse. This is the best that you can feel, So I try to go the other direction of like, all right, I'm gonna sleep more. I'm gonna eat better. I'm gonna do my stretches. I'm gonna try to exercise, drink more water, all that stuff.
Yeah. One thing, you put this post up, somebody on Facebook and or Instagram last month, and somebody, this was amazing to me. It said, "Oh, you're just trading in one addiction for another." You're talking, and he was or she was, I don't remember, referring to the fact that you were touring again, and maybe you were lamenting the tour or something that you were going to start, and you said that I'm
so glad that you remember this and that we're talking about this. So, yeah.
Giving addiction primacy it doesn't deserve, trading one addiction for another, and you said it's a common trope in recovery.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. I gotta say that the woman who made that comment is absolutely somebody I love and trust. She works in Vancouver doing harm reduction, providing clean needles to heroin addicts, and the life that she lives and the work that she does is, it's incredibly important, and she's a far braver person than I am. It's like I value an attack like that or a critique like that. It's coming because I know it's coming from a place of love, and I think she makes a great point. Alcoholics, in the course of alcoholism addiction, we do rewire our brains. We force them to seek sort of like the worst kinds of rewards, and this, the transference of exhibiting addictive behavior with a substance that's not your substance of choice, pretty well documented. It's like, I'm sure we've both done that. I remember getting compliments like on the trains, on the train platform in New York from old friends who would bump into me. They're like, "Man, you look so good. Like, what are you doing differently?" And it's, well, I'd switched from drinking to using like pharmaceutical heroin, and like, yeah, my face looked better, but like inside,
nothing.
Yeah. So I think there's some credence to what she was saying. That tours, in the same way that alcohol is something that I was like obsessed with, and then it made me very happy and very unhappy. Tours like that too. But also, I wanted to be a musician, and I wanted to be a traveling musician since I was like 5 or 6. This is the fulfillment of a lifetime dream and an incredible amount of hard work. I've done so many, this hotel room is pretty nice, and like, I have stayed in hotel rooms with bullet holes in the curtains, and like, and that was a step up from like sleeping in my car, so I've worked at this for a long time. But at the core of this issue, I feel like she's conflating issues with addiction with the human condition, and that's one of the things that I get in trouble with. That lots of other people get in trouble with that too, of to say like to just get into a rut and be like, oh, my life sucks, why am I even doing this? It's pointless, like I should just be drinking, and it's like, well, that's because it's tax day. It's a nightmare for all of us, regardless of what kind of human you are. Doing your taxes sucks. Parking tickets suck. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff in life that just sucks for everybody, and it doesn't matter if you're an addict or not. That's just life, you know. And so don't conflate those human issues with addict issues, because
everybody feels that way, and everybody has bad days, and everybody wants to escape and get away from.
Exactly. You know, I mean, I've had people, you know, when we get angry, there's always the friend who's like, whoa, you know, you're being a dry drunk right now. It's like, no, that motherfucker hit my car. Like, I have a good reason to be angry, you know, and you can get angry and have it be totally justified, you know. Sure. And so I don't know. I do get a little defensive when other people jump to criticize and attack alcoholics and addicts of saying like, oh, you're just trading one addiction for another, or like, oh, you're a dry drunk, or what, you know, that our behavior is continually criticized and pathologized in terms of our addiction. Look at it this way, man. We've recognized that we had problems in our lives, and we fought to improve them. We fought really hard, and we've gone public with the information that we found shortcomings in ourselves, and that we're going to do the hard, often humiliating public work of trying to get better. I know a ton of people who aren't alcoholics or addicts who need to do that same shit. People who are just poisoned with rage and bitterness, you know, anxiety, you know, unable to forgive people. And it's like, you know, give us a little bit of fucking credit, man. This is not fun. It's like, it's hard work. You know,
I think the thing that really kind of swung the door open for me was when I was sitting with my sponsor, and he had the big book there, and he said, John, think of this as like Life, the Missing Manual. And I realized that I had never been taught any of this stuff. I had never been exposed to how to live life, how to treat people, how to treat myself. And it was like, oh, okay, so if I don't look at this as some sort of suspicious, crazy cults, like what if I'm doing this for myself, and this is a book of tools, this is a set of tools that I can use in my everyday life. And, you know, in reading your book and your stories, I see correlations between the things, but again, these seem to me between AA and what you do as far as, you know, saying I'm sorry, and, you know, you talk about deepening the relationships you have and removing the hollow ones and all of that kind of stuff. And so again, I think it just goes back to this human condition of taking care of yourself and the people around you and living a good life.
Yeah. The I remember when I got, you know, when I first got sober and I was like hammering out these, you know, tremendously long runs and like lots of distance. You know, I was at a bar after a show with one of my bands, and this guy, you know, was like, you know, you've just, you know, traded one addiction for another, and like, you know, you're destroying your knees and all this stuff. And I looked at him, and he was probably 60 pounds overweight, had a beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other. And it's like totally socially acceptable for him to criticize my behavior, but if I tell him like, you're probably pre-diabetic, headed towards diabetes,
emphysema,
you know, then suddenly I'm the asshole. But even if AA were a cult, there would still be things to learn.
Yeah,
you know, and that's the thing, is that every religion, any religion, I mean, it's, you know, basically religions are sort of an accumulation of wealth, or accumulation of the mental wealth that we've acquired. I've learned you should do this, you shouldn't do that, those kinds of things, you know, and most of that sort of organized intelligence, there's always something good to pull out of it. For me, I'm pretty hard-headed, and I think about it as like a math, you know, a math book. You can crack open a math book and learn the different equations for here's how you map a circle, or here's how you map a sphere. But if you don't have that book and you just sit at the blackboard trying different equations, if you figure that out on your own, if you can write that equation, map that equation on your own, it'll mean more to you because it came from inside instead of from an outside source. it might be faster, it might be easier to use the book. And, in my instance, sometimes I think I really should have gone to AA just to submit, to be like, fuck it, I'm beat, because I even when I had my moment of surrender, it wasn't an unconditional surrender. It was like, okay, I got to find a way out of this one, I do think that window is closed. I don't think I could go to AA now.
No, and I don't think that it's for everyone. For
Yeah.
a very long time, I didn't think it was for me. So, like, I completely understand reservations and people doing their own thing. And I think that sobriety is just as different as there are as many people out there. However
Yeah.
you want to do it, and if it works for you, far be it for me to tell you you have to do it differently or you're not doing it right. That doesn't seem helpful nor kind.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've found is that we're so good at telling other people what they should do with their lives, but we're so reluctant to tell ourselves what we should do with our lives or to follow those prescriptives. I should get up at 6 or 7 every day. I should, drink hot water with lemon, to exercise. I don't do that every day. I know what the right thing is. I know what the best thing is, but it's so hard to do it.
Right. I do want to ask you in specific, and this is, some of the things that I think why you resonate with me so much is I find myself I'm 42. I have issues with my father. I was a door guy at a music venue in Seattle.
Wow.
I had a very strange relationship with a cat that didn't end well. So I find all these things. Getting sober. I started walking. I'm running a little bit more now, and I thank you for your writing about that and all that. But
walking's important too,
yes.
man. A lot of the running I've done was walking. So
fair enough. But the biggest thing is that my father's passed, so I'm never going to get the opportunity to understand him as a person, to get to learn more about him, and to ultimately forgive him. So I was wondering if maybe you could just talk about being able to do that with your father and how that's helped.
all right, this is kind of messed up,
Okay.
but come along with me on this. One could make an argument that you're actually in a better position to move on than I am, because if your father's gone, forgiven or not, on his end, he's forgiven, right? Because he can't feel any resentment, anger, any of the stuff that you're feeling towards him. So if you hold a grudge against him, it's clear now that it's not doing anything to hurt him, and it's only hurting you. There's a great saying, which is dig 2 graves. When you go to seek revenge against another person, dig 2 graves, one for them and one for you, because trying to get revenge will destroy you probably before it destroys another person.
Yeah.
So if I were a licensed psychotherapist, I would say that you have to find a way that you should not worry about forgiving him, because that's sort of already a done deal, and instead forgive yourself for being reluctant to forgive him.
Yeah, and you make a good point about he's not there to feel the resentment or the anger.
So you're
or
just
any of
hurting
that.
yourself.
It's not going anywhere. It stays inside my head, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Huh. I like that.
I'll send you my invoice at the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
With my dad, I have to exercise that act of forgiving him every day.
You mentioned this,
every
yeah.
time that we interact. He infuriates me regularly. Particularly with politics. He sent me something that was fairly innocuous the other day of like, what is this phrase woke? They were like using it in the Wall Street Journal and, in regards to Bernie and AOC, and, I sort of broke it down for him, and he was like, well, that's not grammatically correct. And I was like, well, yeah, fucking welcome to Earth. Like, I don't, your first day in the world, Dad, come on. We know that we don't agree on politics, so I sort of tried to just keep nudging him, like, just keep your mouth shut. Let's just talk about classic rock or, whatever, but because he's alive, I have to keep forgiving those little things of like, oh, he didn't respond to my text, or he texted me something that annoys me for whatever reason. And it's tricky, and, it takes a lot of work, and also in every interaction with him, I have to say, what's the goal? What's the goal? What's the goal? Like, he and I can sit down and I can, hammer him for Trump, about Trump for 4 hours. I'll never change his mind. He's never going to change my mind. All I'm going to do is ruin Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. So that you have to walk a line between sort of like being a good sort of activist citizen and trying to change the world in the direction that you feel it should be changed. And also, don't fucking ruin Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So when I interact with him, I remind myself my goal is not to be right, not to prove to him that I'm right, or prove to him that I'm smart or smarter or better or stronger. My goal is to get along.
Yeah. What's the end result that I'm seeking, that I'm
exactly
looking for?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I just love that idea of forgiveness is something that happens every single day. It's not something, we don't graduate from this. We don't get a letter of certificate. There's no...
And that's not an alcoholic thing. That's a human thing. That's, and that's... It's one of the things that I'm trying so hard to do right now in my life is sort out what's an alcoholic thing and what's just the human condition. My friend Liz, who was busting my balls on Instagram, I'm fortunate to have a big circle of people like that around me who care about me and care about my health, my wellness, my sobriety. But I'll often get nudged that like, oh, you're constantly traveling. You always have to be on tour. You always have to be going somewhere. That's a sign of that you're a dry drunk, that your new addiction is touring or traveling, and this other thing of like, I can't rest, I can't relax, I can't just sit down and like do a thing, like sit and watch a movie without playing guitar while I'm watching a movie, or playing on my phone, or doing emails while I'm watching a movie. It's I've always got to be working, and since I moved closer, been spending more time with my parents, and I hung out with my dad over Christmas, went to go see him, and he was like, okay, I'll wake you up, breakfast at 7:30. After that, then I need your help moving this, and then my ukulele band is going to go and play for this, group of developmentally disabled adults. That ends at, 11:30. At 11:35, we'll be in the car. We're going to just one thing after the other, right? And I was hanging out with my sister, and I was like, I need to talk to you for a minute. She was like, awesome, put on your running shoes, we'll go run while we're talking, and then I had to call her, and I was like, why are you grunting? She was like, well, I'm doing my leg exercises while I'm talking to you. Then I was hanging out with my mom. My mom was like, okay, I have a 10-day window here. I'm going to go to Vietnam for that window. And then as soon as I get back, I'm going to be here, work for another 3 weeks. And then I'm going to go, to Nepal, and I don't have to do shit all the time and go places all the time because I'm a sober alcoholic. That's who I am. That's who my family is.
Yeah.
Both my parents are sort of like hardworking farm kids, so it's always like, what's the next job? What's the next job? What's the next thing that we're doing? We do stuff. Mm-hmm. And my mom she's not a touring musician. She just likes going places.
She's got a blog. Is that what I saw?
Yeah, she's got a new blog. It's awesome. It's A Lone Woman, which
great.
If you look at it, it says a lone woman. But
that's
yeah,
great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, what have you found? Have you found that it's mostly, in your experience, it's a human condition, or I mean, with elements of alcoholism?
Well, it was a thing where I was sort of like worried in the back of my head that, oh, I need to change this about myself, that this is an element of my recovery, my transition from alcoholic to human being. And then I looked at it and I was like, no, this is stuff that I arrive at genetically. It has nothing to do with my illness. It's just who I am, how I was raised. And my sister's the same way, and she's not an alcoholic. She's never struggled with alcoholism. So in that instance, I just have to be like, oh, that's just who I am.
Yeah.
There's no cure for the human condition.
Yeah. In reading your stories, and the way that I read them is I listened to them on Audible, which was really, I love it when I can hear the author read the story, because I find that oftentimes there's inflection and emotion that comes across, even if I don't know what the recording process is like there, but I've heard a lot more through a story in the author's reading of it. But there were a couple of times where I was out, and so I would do them while I was on my walks or my runs or in the car. And there's one, I think it's near the end of the long run, where you're talking about, am I a good man? And I started to cry a little bit, because it was this sort of revelation as you look around at the evidence of what you have been doing as a sober human being, versus all the shit that you still think you are in your head. And later in your novel, I think you talk about the disparity between the drunk you are to the people around you and the drunk you are in your head. I don't know if you still, 10 years later, struggle with that. Again, is that a human thing of who I am inside?
Yeah.
Who I am on the outside?
Yes, I do still struggle with that. I still, I still sort of like wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and I'm like, fuck, you again? It's just like that. We always arrive at that sort of like worst assessment, lowest assessment of who we are as a human being. And also, that's ubiquitous. Everybody thinks they're a piece of shit. Everybody thinks they're a loner. Everybody thinks they're an outsider. Everybody thinks their family is weird. And this is one of the things that I've, experienced of like, talking to people. I was in a band called Beat the Devil, and it was fronted by a small first-generation Indian immigrant woman. And we would, tour through America, through sort of like redneck backwaters. And, all of the songs were about sort of like being an outsider, being a misfit, not fitting in. And these were her songs, about her experience sort of growing up in white America. And we would see these like bros at our shows, with the like backwards baseball hat and like singing along, and like they knew every word. And I was like, what the fuck? And I remember like partying with them after the shows and being like, what about this music speaks to you? And they're like, oh yeah, man, everybody in my family, they were all Red Sox fans, and like I like the Cardinals, man, and I was like an outcast. I was like an outsider, man. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, are you? And so it made me realize that it's not just alcoholics who think, and also, I mean, I was talking to this writer who I really admire, and he was like, oh yeah, well, I'm a total piece of shit. And I'm like, are you really? Like what? Because you like killed a frog when you were a kid? Like everybody did weird, stupid shit when they were kids, or like we've all done stuff that we're not proud of. That's just human, and you need to. You say, oh, okay, I'm a piece of shit. Why am I a piece of shit? Well, because I did these three things. Okay, I need to look at these three things, compare them to like human experience and. The human experience writ large, didn't kill anybody, didn't rape anybody, didn't, sexually assault anyone, that like, maybe I lied to my parents, or I shoplifted or whatever, or I got fucked up all through the summer of 7th grade or whatever it is. It falls within the normal human umbrella of just shittiness, just being human. Weakness, that's what unites us, is our human weakness. Just fucking forgive yourself and move on, man.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things too, where when we keep excoriating ourselves for the little thing, I pissed the bed when I was 9 or whatever, you keep yourself feeling bad about that for the rest of your life, it's not pissing the bed that's a bad thing. The bad thing is your inability to forgive yourself for pissing the bed, because it affects who you are every day of your life. If you feel like you're a piece of shit and then you abuse the person working behind the counter at Starbucks because of it, you take a very small, very forgivable thing and spin it into this person who's consumed with sort of bitterness and self-loathing and can't move on.
Yeah. I think I also wanted to ask you to describe this. You talk about this in the book, and I had to suggest that everybody go get your book. I swear I'll make it up to you, and also all the Kindle singles, because I've listened to them all, and they're all great.
Thank you.
But Narcissus, this is a great. I love this creation that you've come up with.
Yeah,
because it rings very true.
Yeah. So the so Sisyphus is the guy who's sort of like rolling the rock up the hill, and then almost gets to the top of the hill, and then it like falls back down. And Narcissus is the character entranced by his own reflection because he's so beautiful. And so Narcissus was just a character I came up with, or an idea, or a way of understanding myself, of somebody who's myopically obsessed with their own failures again and again and again, and unable to look away, and in love with it. Mm-hmm. And that's still a part of me to this day. Of just like, waking up exhausted, going to make the coffee, and like you pour the coffee in the wrong thing, and then God, I make coffee how long have I been doing this that I don't know how, and it's like, you haven't had your coffee yet, like relax,
Yeah.
And so I wasn't able to coin that phrase because I've gotten past it. I was able to coin that phrase because I haven't.
Fair enough.
And I still see that, in myself, of like, to spill a cup of coffee, I say, God damn it, like you always spill the coffee. Well, no, I spill 1 out of every 100 cups,
Mm-hmm.
which is still higher than I'd like it to be, but I usually don't spill the coffee. It's just a question of how you frame it. But yeah, that character stays with me and will stay with me for the rest of my life. And like,
not to glorify our mistakes. They are usually minimal.
Yeah. But also one of the things that I've been working hard towards is, with the live show, to go into that darkness and bitterness or regret and anger and sadness, and not to let it derail me, but also not to alienate myself from that part of my life and those people who I've been, and the stuff that I've done and the mistakes that I've made, which is the old Walt Whitman line about I'm large, I contain multitudes. We all have a number of different people inside of us, and I'm working to get to a point where we're sort of like all sitting at the table together, and I can be like, okay, Narcissus, keep your mouth shut, just sit here quietly, eat your food. Mm-hmm. I don't need to hear from you right now, so it's just trying to get everybody to behave,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I'm glad that I have those dark passengers with me, because it's given me so much more empathy for other people who are struggling.
There, but for the grace of God go I kind of thing, when you hear people say things and you're like, God, oh wait, that's something I would have done or said.
Yeah, for me it's there, but for the grace of Mom go I.
Nice. A couple things, and I know you have to go very soon here, but also in your book, there's a couple more moments that really resonated with me. Was you talk about, I think it's in the afterwards of the Long Run and Other Stories, and you talk about, you say all those banal cross-stitch sentiments, they're all true. And these were moments where I was out just on the street running and walking, and it was just like, wow. And there was this level of like the sense of hope, like, okay, I'm 230 pounds. I used to be 270, and that was only like 6 or 7 months ago, and I was just like, so I started running, and I've been having problems with my heel, so I started running faster, and I was in my head, I was thinking, I want to run more than I want my heel to hurt. I want to write more than I want a 10 bar, which is what I do now. And, it was just this big sort of moment for me. And I was like, this is really awesome. And I look at this person who has done something for themselves. I don't feel envious of the things you have. I'm like excited and for the idea of hope and possibility. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really, it was really great. It was a great moment in your writing that I...
Yeah, I mean, I'm cynical about a lot of stuff, but I'm not a nihilist. And I there is no place like home. That's literally true. And it's, there's a great line by the reporter Lawrence Weschler, or actually I think it's a quote from Robert Irwin, when Weschler was interviewing him, and he says, seeing is forgetting the name of the object one sees. The microphone here, if I say, oh, it's a microphone, it's like, oh, but if I explain to you all the different parts that are in there and what it does and how it functions, it seems fucking magical.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to say there's no place like home, and something we've heard a million times, and it's been stripped of all meaning. But if you go into it, slow down, unpack it all, like what you just said about, being down to 230 from 270, that's massive.
Yeah.
If you take the context away, then we don't see that the arrow is going in the positive direction, right?
Right.
And also that you 10 bar, that's an awesome admission, right? So you're like me, right? You have sort of like warring factions in your life, right?
Constantly, there's a huge dichotomy.
Sobriety's been a huge gift to you, and you probably believe, as I do, that people are largely better off if they're not drinking, and you work providing them, with those drinks. The bar last night, my role there is to sell drinks.
Yeah.
So it's important to remember that hypocrisy is sort of stitched into the human condition, and we can't excoriate ourselves for that. You just have to say, well, it's
a nightly reminder of why I do what I do.
Exactly. Exactly. And also those people, that's their choice. They have that personal freedom. Mm-hmm. Having not come through a 12-step program, I didn't have an investment in the group or any kind of fellowship or humanity writ large. For me, it was just me, myself. It was all about personal responsibility. And that's affected my experience as a sober human, where I'm not super concerned with interfering in other people's lives. If somebody wants to get sober, awesome, go do it. I'm not going to do it for you. I'm absolutely here to hug you, to high five you, to support you when you get sober, but I can't hold your hand throughout that process just because there's too many people. And also, if you need help getting sober, perhaps don't reach out to the guy who never asked for help when he was getting sober, because I will not be as sympathetic as someone else. Well, I just locked myself in my room, man.
Yeah, I hear that. There's plenty of people who want to help and who can help, and so, I mean, it's definitely not something you have to do alone, but I appreciate that you did,
That's another thing I want to point out, like, real quick here at the end too, is just that we live in this world where it's, everything has to be, there has to be this sort of cloak of altruism of like, oh, I'm going to walk across America to raise money for... You can just walk across America because it's something that you always wanted to do. and that it's just a personal trip that you wanted to take, you wanted to have that adventure. Not everything needs to be a fundraiser for some charity that's only going to use 20% of the money, and like another 3% goes to PayPal or whatever credit card. You know, you want to save the world, start with yourself. Save yourself, and then you can save other people. I sort of get you know, I get grief about this sometimes, you know, that I'm not super I've always been sort of a lone operator, but I've been very honest that, you know, in my books and in my writing, that when I got sober, it was just for me. I was just trying to save my own ass. I wasn't trying to help other people. And that's a great reason to get sober. Just out of selfishness and survival, right?
Absolutely.
And then to be able to write about that honestly and in detail, it resonated with a whole other group of people who have been alienated from sobriety because they don't want to turn into some Lifetime movie, glowing, super positive sobriety recovery, you know, story. You know, I can be kind of an abrasive prick, and like, I didn't want that to change when I got sober. I didn't want to be a different, you know, different person. I just wanted to not be out of control all the time.
Yeah.
And you know, I value some of my anger and some of my resentment, you know, and fortunately I've been able to keep it. You know, I found a way of getting better where I am better, and I'm happier and healthier and far more productive. But I didn't have to entirely tear down and reinvent, you know, who I am as a person.
Awesome. Thank you, and I appreciate you talking with me.
Absolutely,
and meeting up
man.
with me, and for the shows that you do or that you did last night, and for the shows you're going to do. And you know, one of my new favorite quotes is from your book, and it's simply, "The race ain't over."
Yeah, man.
The race ain't over.
It's never over. It's never over.
Mishka, thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks again for listening. Our music, as always, is by Neglect. You can find more of his stuff at neglect.bandcamp.com.
And you can find us on all social media platforms that matter: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can reach us at aisforalcoholic@gmail.com.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.